If you've been struggling with solid color ombres, I am going to teach you the easiest way possible to do it. What's up, nail crew? It's Nicole, your fellow nail obsessed DIYer. Today we are all about the ombre. This is a technique that I figured out when I was trying to work on my ombre skills, and I just could not get my ombre to look nice. So you're gonna need 2 fluffy ombre brushes and then 2 dip cups or some kind of cupcake liner if you don't have dip cups like this. We're gonna start out doing the tap method for the ombre. And what that means is you dip the brush into the color that you're using and then tap it onto your nail. So it doesn't have to be perfect when you're doing this tap. You wanna make sure that you apply your dip liquids really thinly. That's gonna keep your nails looking nice and not getting bulky since you're tapping so much powder on it. So I like to start with the lighter color first and tap that, and then do the darker color second on the first dip. The purple that I'm using is called Bernice Matisse. That bright light blue is called You Desirable. They're both from OG Dip Powder. And then the flake that I'm going to use is called Hickey from Kenickie. That one's part of a grease collection. So you saw me do the light color, and then I did the darker, the blue color. And I let it sit on there while I do my next nail. So I don't brush it off right away. I like to let it sit and the colors like really soak in. Then on the second dip, I will start with the darker color first and then do the lighter color. And when I'm doing the darker color on the second pass for the ombre of the tapping, I don't go as high as I did on the first dip. So you saw on my pointer finger, I'm trying to keep the blue down a little bit further so I can go a little bit past where the purple was on the first dip with the purple tapping on the second dip. The reason that I do that is it really helps the ombre start to blend nicely. Like if you do it at the exact same position, the tapping, it tends to look like a straight line versus an ombre. And I wanted to use colors that were a little bit distinct from each other. Like the purple is probably lighter than I would have gone, but I feel like it shows how you can really do a good ombre with 2 separate colors. You can see on both second dips of my pointer and my middle finger, I only went up about halfway up my nail with the blue so that the purple could come down further and give that nice blended ombre effect. Some people also call these baby boomer nails. I typically think of baby boomer nails when I'm doing a pink and white, but whatever you want to call it, ombre, baby boomer, whatever you want to call it, we're just trying to get these colors to fade nicely into each other and not look like a color block. Once I finish my tapping, I like to trace around my nail with either an orange wood stick or a pointy nail tool. I was using an orange wood stick for this mani just because that's what I grabbed. Once you get your colors tapped on, then you're going to start to do a scrub method. So what I do is I take one of the colors that I feel like it needs to be a little bit more present on the nail. Felt like the purple just wasn't popping enough. So I dipped my brush into the purple powder and then started scrubbing it onto where the purple is. And I tried doing it a little on the blue just to see if I needed it. And then I'm like, it really doesn't need it for the blue. There's like one spot that didn't look quite as blue as the others. So I made sure that I scrubbed a little bit of blue on my pointer finger where I felt like it wasn't popping enough. When you're brushing off the excess powder for your ombre, do not brush it back into either of your colors. So because you're going to mix up some of the colors that you're ombreing if you try to brush it back into the container. So like I just brushed my nail off to the side. Then I went onto my middle nail doing the scrubbing in. And this combination of the tapping first and then the scrubbing is what has given me the best possible ombre effect. I was not good at one method versus the other. Felt like my tap method just didn't blend enough. And then I felt like when I was scrubbing in, it wasn't a strong enough color payout. So I decided one time to just try doing this combination of tapping and then scrubbing. And I was like, bam, it worked perfectly. I was so excited. Since I figured that out, I want to say that was probably like, I don't know, a year or 2 years ago. At this point, everything is kind of blending together. I've been dipping my own nails at home for like 4.5 years. So I feel like I forget time frames when I started doing different things, but that is how I get such a nice payout on my ombres. Then once you finish that, once you finish your scrubbing and your color payout looks how you want to top it with clear dip powder. And this is an absolute must step for me. If you don't top your ombre with clear dip powder, after you activate and you go to buff it smooth, you can ruin some of that ombre look. So doing the last dip of clear dip powder, and then you brush off the excess and activate it. I do that to seal everything in to make sure that my ombre doesn't get messed up. After we did all that work to make our ombre look nice, we definitely do not want to mess it up and get any flakes, glitters, anything like that in it for the other colors that we're dipping. So now I can go in and dip my flaky color. And this gorgeous purple is the one that's called Hickey from Kenickie. I love it. The little flakes in it are like purple, pink, blue. They reflect all these colors. So when I was looking for what colors I wanted to ombre with it, I immediately knew I wanted to use like this bright blue and then use a lighter purple. The best method that I found to apply flake dips is to lay your nail flat onto the dip. So I like to pour it into these dip cup liners, and you can also use a cupcake liner if you don't have them. Then I shake the flakes up to the top so that when I lay my nail flat, I'm getting the maximum flake payout as I possibly can. If you don't shake the flakes up, you kind of tend to not get as many coming up to the surface because I feel like the flakes are very light. So if you tap it, they come up really nicely to the top so you can get that beautiful flaky payout as much as you possibly can. I do that for both my first and my second dip. Since the flakes really like melt down on your nails, you don't have to worry about them getting super thick. So when you're dipping a glitter or a foil, I try to be a lot more careful, especially with the glitters, that I'm not picking up a ton of glitters on my first dip when I lay my nail flat. But with flakes and even with foils, because they meld in nicely, you really want to get as many as you can on both dips. So like if you're somebody who loves your nail to look like really flaked out or really foiled out, then doing this method of shaking the dip powders and kind of like tapping the container onto the table you're using, that'll really make everything come to the top. When I'm dipping glitters, I only do the tapping of the glitter in the little container on the second dip because I don't want my nails to be super thick. Now, I only have to do 2 dips of each color because I keep builder gel on my natural nails as a base, and I build my apex with the builder gel. This way I only need to do 2 dips of the color and then 1 dip of the clear. If you're someone who can't use builder gel or doesn't want to use builder gel as your base, you can do like 1 to 2, 3 at the most dips of clear to build your apex underneath your color. This way you don't have to do so many dips of your color. And especially if you don't like your nails to be thick, which we definitely don't want thick nails, that often leads to chipping, cracking, and lifting. The clear dip powder is the thinnest because it doesn't have anything else in it. It's just the clear. So using that as your base works really well too to build your apex, so you don't have to worry about your nails getting too thick by having to do like say 5 dips of the color or something like that. Once I finish up all of my flake nails, then I go in and top with clear dip powder. You can see a theme here. I'm always topping with clear dip powder when I use dip liquids. So regardless of the kind of dip that I'm doing, whether I'm using solids, shimmers, flakes, foils, glitters, fine glitters, chunky glitters, clear dip powder is always my last dip when I'm using dip liquids. This seals in the color. So for our ombre, it was really important to use clear because when you go to buff and shape, you can mess up your ombre, or you can get some glitter in it or flakes or foils if you're doing those nails next. And now when I'm doing my flake nails, I really want to make sure I encapsulate the flakes and all that into the clear so that when I buff and shape, I don't mess up any of my flakes. If you don't use clear as your last layer, you really end up not being able to buff and shape much. The way that you know your nails are ready for buffing and shaping after you activate them is you want to give them a nice tap. So if you tap on your nails and you don't get like a hard tapping sound, they are not ready to buff and shape. If you tap and they feel hard and you get like this like tapping, clicking sound, then you know, okay, my nails are ready to buff and shape. You can use a buffing block or a flexible file like the one I'm using. I have really big hands. Like people say that, and then I'll compare my hands to theirs and mine will be so much bigger. Like when I say I have huge hands, I mean, I literally cannot find tips to fit my thumbs. They are that big. Like I literally need like a size 17. I'm going to try some new full covers, see if I can find any that fit. But anyways, that's a whole nother video. This is why I like to use a flexible file rather than a buffing block, because my hands are so big. It just helps me to be able to do the buffing really nicely. Then I go around my cuticles with the Pana Fine Barrel Bit. This way it just cleans up my cuticle line so I get that nice, crisp, beautiful cuticle line. Nothing is stuck and like uneven. Then I spray isopropyl alcohol onto my nails and use a stiff nail brush to brush off all of that filing dust. If you're still struggling with basic dip powder application and you are not ready to try an ombre yet, make sure you check out the first pinned comment. It has the link to my Dip Nails 101, the ultimate guide to dipping your nails at home. It is 45 pages of everything you need from prep to application to removal. Now we're gonna go through and we're gonna do our top coating, which is one of my favorite parts of the mani because you get to see it all come together. After I clean my nails with isopropyl alcohol, I let that dry, and then you make sure you follow the top coating instructions for whatever liquids you're using. You cannot do top coating instructions for one brand using them for another if they aren't the same direction. So for the dip liquids that I'm using from OG Dip Powder, you apply heavy activator on 5 nails, thumb to pinky. Then when you get to your pinky, you count to 10 and go back to your thumb for the first layer. You do it in 2 to 3 quick, even, thin strokes on thumb to pinky, and then you go right back in for the second layer. You can do the second layer a little bit more detailed and slower, but whatever brand I'm using, I make sure that I float the top coat. That's gonna keep you from contaminating the top coat brush and getting it hard. Now that you know how to do a solid color ombre, check out this next video and we'll learn how to do a chunky glitter ombre. Thanks for joining me today, nail crew.